Hello everybody, and welcome to the December 20th, ever so slightly pre-December solstice episode of the Dojo December series, and this is the second episode in December. And I'm super stoked to have Lena offering energy work and to have Hoda receiving. And if you've listened to previous recordings of this or you've been here live before, I'll often just make noise and clap and move for about 10 minutes while everybody waits patiently for me to finally come to a close. And then I'll say like the thing that which is like more or less what I normally say about what dojo is. But you may have seen that Hoda wrote a beautiful little introduction for the container a little earlier this week, and I felt called to give space to her to describe what dojo means to her or what it is to her. And I'm really excited to hear that explication. But I just want to say thank you again for hopping into the ring. Um, and I'm really looking forward to listening in to what comes through. Thanks again. Unpin, mute. Go.
Thanks for the intro, Nobu. And yeah, to explain a little bit of what dojo is to me, I said it before we started recording, so I will be reiterating myself. Um, is that to me, dojo is a safe container where folks who lean towards the more energetic, sensitive side of life um, can come and learn and trade martial skills across, I'd say, lineages. To me, from the perspective of an energetically sensitive person, I feel like the world and just my day-to-day interactions reflect what I call um like artifacts of like martial exchange, which is the exchange to offer someone something, and also the other side of that exchange being receiving that offering, which to me is part of learning martial skills. And then it also includes how to defend oneself against offerings that you don't want to take. And so to me, dojo as a place in the room is, yeah, it leans towards being a safe container for us to sort of extract pieces of life and bring them into this container and learn how to like exchange them in mindful, and I sense, because it's Lena, sweet ways. So
That's really sweet, Hoda. Thank you for saying that. Um, I so this is my first time being present for a live dojo container, and I'm also the one who is offering the energy work. So I kind of just realized that, and I think it's funny. I just went like, whoop. I didn't prepare anything to say, but I kind of just felt called to say hi to everyone. I'm Lena, and I've been in the broom for, I guess, almost 6 months or so now. I think I joined in August. And I am a writer and a teacher of writing currently. And I've been offering one-on-one sessions with folks for the past 2.5 years, primarily focused on astrology, dabbled a bit into human design, and then went back out of it. I would say that Kabbalah is a big lineage of mine. My grandfather was a scholar of Kabbalah, and I received a lot of his books a few years ago, which was a major initiation for me, I guess. And yeah, I also just felt called to say that I work with dreams a lot, and both like sleeping and waking dreams, and the images the images and stories that come from them. And I believe the first time that I met Hoda was actually in a dream work container that she facilitated. So it just feels like a nice full circle with that. Um, so yeah, that is my introduction. Yeah, should we start? Should we start? Okay. So, well, how are you today, Hoda? What how are you in this moment, Hoda?
Thank you for asking. I feel pretty, I was a little nervous before we hopped on. Um, but there was a moment yesterday where I was guided to sit and meditate to like visualize this container in advance. And in that visualization, I remember just kind of seeing a lot of like things that symbolize to me like peace. And
Mm,
so I would say in this moment, especially like being here right now, I feel really, really peaceful and joyous.
mm. That is beautiful. Thank you for saying that. Well,
Yeah.
and I not just for saying that, but I'm glad that you are bringing that in. I feel peaceful too in this moment. I was quite
Yeah.
nervous.
Mm-hmm.
I was quite like upregulated earlier, and I think that part of that is being back in the city after being in a more peaceful and rural place for the past 4 months. Um,
Mm.
what else was I feeling anxious about? I don't know. I've been um I've been just noticing a lot about my breath recently. Um and I felt called to like okay, might be kind of like abstract to start with, but I've been feeling really called to like um take like the locus of I guess control out of my face and like drop it down like into my body.
Interesting.
Um I think a lot with like the face that we show to the world that I like show. Um I've been feeling a lot of strain. Maybe you could call it like masking.
Mm.
And I feel called to bring more neutrality into this whole inside and out, this whole like upper realm. And so that's kind of my intention is to kind of come from that place, like in this container. Um offering some kind of intonation. Oh, I'm wearing my Moldavite also. Keep that thing on
Oh, I
me.
love it.
um, um so um yeah. So I not many if any. Yeah. I don't really know what that means, but um I okay, so what I felt interested in kind of bringing up as a preliminary question, Hoda, that I wrote to you about is that I feel really interested in this concept of knots. Um, and traditionally with readings, I've asked people like, what is a problem that you are struggling with, or what is a question that you are working with?
Yeah.
But I decided to phrase it in the question of like, what is a knot, like KNOT? What is a like, if you imagine yourself like, if there's like a knot in front of you, like what is the like texture of that, or like what is that? And related to that could be right, like relationship to it? Like, does it feel like a knot that you want to like struggle to untangle?
Yeah.
Or does it feel like something that you can start to maybe unweave some of the threads and work more like loosely with it?
Mhm.
So that's kind of like a two-part question that I think I already posed the first part of it to you. But I'm curious if you would like to share, if there is this knot in front of you, what is the content of it? And I guess we can start there and then maybe touch on like how you're feeling in relation to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that phrasing and also like the way that it was the question is framed. So thank you for asking and also like the way that you asked it. We talked a little bit about it in messages, and I feel like one of the primary knots that I encounter, um, especially when I'm doing like meditation work or oracle work, is this propensity to see my own awareness or witness my own awareness being scattered across various different timelines. And I hope that that's concrete. Um, and I think the way that I phrased it in our conversation was like sometimes I'll sit in meditation and I can feel like a channel open to the past, and then I can feel one open to the future. And then I'll feel like the channel open to the present moment. And so I think the knot in the way that I'm relating to it has to do with like this linear construction of present. Maybe it's just in my mind, but the way that I see it is like present first, future, then past. And I sometimes struggle, yeah, with just what I would say like streamlining my channel and streamlining the channel that I get from the ethers, or the channel that I use to get information from the ethers, streamlining it so that the information that I'm receiving, whether from like my own body or from like my psychic senses, is relevant to the context of a conversation or a just me in my own kind of meditative space. Um, so it feels like there's like a couple different knots, and they have to do with time, I would say, to kind of like sum it up a little bit.
Mm. Yeah. So when you mentioned like this linear construction of present, future, past, I guess like whose idea is that? Like where does that linear arrangement come from?
I never really thought about it. I'd say it probably stems from my matrilineal ancestry. Yeah, it feels like it stems from this understanding of time as being a linear expression.
Mm.
And yeah, even as I tune into it, I can like hear an order of operations, like first this, second this, then this. And yeah, I I don't think it's mine, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to just clarify so that I was hearing correctly that you feel like this order of operations goes present, future, past.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
when I'm in that moment, the moment that I like in that meditative moment with myself, when I start to feel like I'm kind of out of touch with what I'm channeling, the order the order varies, and it
Mm-hmm.
also in that variation feels like, yeah, that's where I come across the knot or like difficulty connecting to what I'm getting from the ethers, if that makes sense.
Mm. I think I'm still a little bit murky on it. So like I feel like I'm like understanding that the knot is about time and that it's about like a linear order of these discrete three elements of present, future, past. But I guess I'm just curious because you're speaking about this maybe received notion of having needing to have an order of operations that progresses linearly. Does that feel accurate?
Absolutely,
But
yeah.
But I guess I'm just stuck on like if we think of like linear time, it like technically goes like past, present, future. Do you know
Right.
do you hear what I'm like?
Totally, yeah. Yeah.
But
And I like that I'm sorry, go on.
well, just it seems like the order of operations that you feel has been received or taken on is actually like not linear. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And I think
Okay.
that's where like my own wires got crossed, where I'm like, it's not linear. I don't mind it, but it feels like when I'm channeling it, or maybe it's like when I'm like offering it as something to be received, that linearity is the form that wants to capture that channeling or that stream. And so yeah, I'm really glad you kind of broke it down like that, because I was like, it's not linear and I like it, but it seems like the push to make things linear is what makes me not like it.
Whoa.
My head is kind of like blown off right now a little too. So if y'all feel that way.
Yeah. Well, so I feel like there's a part of me that wants to keep, but then I feel like there's also a part of me that wants to kind of like expand around so we don't like make more of a knot, right? But I see. Yeah. It's so interesting. Well, I guess I'll ask like present, future, past. Okay, wait, hold on. Wait, can you say the last thing that you just said, if you remember?
Yeah, I think
It's not
the last
how you make it.
Yes.
Okay. You said it's not linear, but you like it. But there's also a part of you that wants to make it more linear. It seems like there's a part of you that wants to make things less linear and a part that wants to make them more linear. Does that
accurate?
Okay.
100%. And I feel the tension between those aspects of myself often. So yes.
Yeah. Okay, I feel like this word linear feels really like it holds a lot. So I'm just gonna go look up the etymology of linear.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, linear, resembling a line of or pertaining to lines, belonging to a line. That just makes me think of lineage.
Oops. Oops. Oh, does it now?
It does. It does. Yeah.
Please say more if you feel inclined. Yeah.
Well, belonging to a line, right? Like you're mentioning, you even said the word matrilineal, right? Which has this like like pertaining to a line.
Right.
So I guess like let's see. So like okay, I'm gonna keep looking at the etymology. So it's so interesting because I think that like so linear comes from the word line, and a line is something that can connect things, right? Like if you think of a string of beads, right? Like a necklace, like it brings things together. But then like linen thread, for it says linen thread, right? Like then right after that it says a mark, bound, limit, and then it says line of descent. So I'm just kind of thinking of like I'm seeing like almost like this triangle of like there's like lineage, right? Like you're like maybe matrilineal like lineage, and then like there's like this line, like a connective line, like the ability to connect through the lineage. And then there's also like almost somehow like a line that is like a boundary line or like a demarcating line that separates one thing from another. And I guess I'm curious if you have like any more to say about yeah, I guess anything about any of that that resonates with you or that you feel like resonates with your lineage.
Wow. Oh wow. Yeah, I would wow, I'm getting a little like shaky right now. I guess the first thing that comes up for me, especially like as you were speaking to like line and like the linearity and also like the root word of like lineage, it makes me reflect on last night how I was talking to my mom, in particular, like getting a better grasp on stories that she's told me about her own upbringing, um, and the particular experience of her having been orphaned for a while. Um, and this like winding way of like how she came back into her lineage and also relationship with like her sisters, her parents. Um, and then it also brings up for me regarding what you said, like demarcation, this like line where things are differentiated. Um, and I would say that like for, I mean, probably like a lot of like female bodied folks, like I did not differentiate my mom's reality from like my own reality. Um, I also didn't differentiate, yeah, between like the breadth of my mom's emotional intelligence or lack of emotional intelligence from like my own breadth of emotional intelligence or lack of emotional intelligence. Um, wow, I'm getting kind of like verklempt. And it brings me to like something that my mom has always told me like about lineage because in the cultures that I was reared in and probably a lot of other people's cultures, like the patrilineal side is where we receive and also take in a lot of like our stories, our lore, our like understanding of, let's say, even spirit. A lot of the times comes from like one's patrilineal ancestry. And I remember being younger and telling my mom, like, that's just so unfair. Like, what if I changed my name to reflect your last name and like connected myself to your lineage? And she was like, girls don't belong to their, she told me this, like growing up, they don't belong to their mother's lineage, they carry it forward. Like that's their responsibility, and then they make their own lineage. Um, and I think that kind of like stuck with me, whether it's true or not in all contexts. But it was also like a little bit of a rally cry for me growing up, where I was like, I kind of came to terms that that fixed sort of cohesive lineage that a lot of other people have and have had the experience of probably won't be mine. And so that demarcation, and I feel like it reflects to like why things like even past, present, and future are not that clear for me, because I feel like that demarcation isn't as pronounced for me as it might be for other people, for a number of reasons, but mostly because of the way that like that advice or that like tip from my mom sort of like saturated my my own awareness. So yeah, wow, that brought up a lot, a lot.
Mm. Yeah. How are you feeling now, like after sharing that?
I feel like some somatic like release in this area, like my higher heart. Um, I want to cry, but it's like distant. So I'm like, I think it's just gonna stay there. But yeah, lots of surfacing right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Well, I feel like, yeah, I definitely felt a lot of that. Um, yeah, so that notion of that, like, girls don't get to inherit the past, they have to create the future. Is that kind of, was that kind of the tenor of, yeah, of
Yeah,
what you.
exactly that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I mean, so I think I can understand from that how the order of operations of time and like the way that is felt in the body would feel tangled or maybe out of order in some way. Um, hmm. Do you feel like you would like to develop more of a relationship to the past? I know that's like a big question, but
Yeah, I like it though. It's a good question. Hmm. I think yeah. Like there's a part of me that's like, yeah, that would be wise, you know? Or I'm like integrating, well, Phil is wise for like a number of reasons, and I'll say yes. And I'll name one of the reasons as integration, probably being of probably like the onus for remembering the past or developing, yeah, that relationship with it.
do you feel with that, I guess, are you thinking more of your personal or ancestral past, or more of kind of like the transpersonal, like history, like more broadly construed?
Mm-hmm. I love that question. I don't think I know.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
Because there's this,
Go ahead.
sorry, go on. Go on.
Hey.
Oh, yeah, I was just kind of feeling that there is a part of me that's like, that would be a good idea. And that would be like wise. And there's another part of me that's like, I'm like, I have such trickster guides. Anyways, there is another part of me that does want some airtime around like, why would that be important? Or like, what is the necessity even for that? Which I don't even think I've ever asked myself either. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, like when I hear you say like that would be wise, if like mm, wise. I don't know. I guess I'm wondering like what the word like wise would mean to you in this context.
Yeah. I think I would kind of see it as like, yeah, like wise, like it would be integrative or like a smart thing to do, or like something that if my mom was a spiritual practitioner, she would probably be like, you need to get on that. You need to get on that, you know?
Uh-huh. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Uh-huh. So there is still like a bit of this like hidden mother, maybe like in that little bit.
Oh, I love the way you put
I'm,
that.
I'm
Hidden.
sorry to call you out. I'm sorry.
She's right here, Lena. She's right here.
I know my mom is also often like on my shoulder.
I love
um,
that.
so like, I guess so what came up for me when you said that would be wise is um mm, mm, mm. yeah, like I just kind of thought of like this like put you know paternal guidance of like make smart decisions, right? Like when I heard wise too, it felt a little bit more like traditionally like patrilineal to me. Um, and it did
Wow.
kind of bring up what you shared about how maybe in the value system of your family, like the paternal line was seen as the one that like could carry the wisdom. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting you say that because actually, for the first 7 years of my life, I grew up with my dad's mother raising me while my dad lived in another state. And so, like, my first impression of my patrilineal ancestry or patrilineal lineage was a woman on that side. Yeah.
hmm, yeah. So yeah, I'm just so interested in the influence that I guess I'll say like authority figures can have on us when they're not presently with us. And even maybe more so, at least in my experience. Like I will like carry around, mostly it's my mom, but it's like I'll carry around this little like specter of my mom and like like tell myself to do things like based on like that little voice. And then I actually like see my mom and she's like, "Hey, how are you?" Like, and it's just so much like softer. It's like seems like you're doing great. um
So real.
and like so I'm just thinking of that. Um and just thinking of like what yeah, like what it means to also have maybe like a stand-in for that person. Which like may or may not have been what your father's mother, you said, raised you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking of like kind of like displaced or like just like geographies of like authority.
Mm. Yeah, that feels really aligned. I also like when you said the geography word, literally in my field, I felt like this image just flashed of these like this triangle of like authority in my life and also like percentage signs on top of their head to like speak to how much their influence is still in my life. And I'm like, fuck. No, I'm just kidding.
Whoa.
But it does. It feels super alive. Because I also feel like the way that I grew up was so I'll just say it was like so fucking disorganized that it was like my grandmother was raising me and my older sister in particular in a way to raise my parents, which she was also raising. And so like there's these like textures of like being parentified, textures of like maturing probably way too or quicker than my body probably wanted to. Um and also this like urgency from my grandmother. Like often when I see her in my mind's eye, she's passed now, but since like when I see her in my mind's eye, there is like a part of me that relates to her essence as like a drill sergeant. Like so like if I'm meditating on something and I'm just like in the ethers and I'm like learning about Lumeria and I'm like, oh my gosh, she comes in and she's just like bah, 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 like she like lays down the law, even though it's similar to like what you said, like in my experience of her, she was super soft, super tender, super matronly. In the astrals, like she's a totally like or that might just be my association, but she presents completely different than what I'm used to. So wow. Wow. Yeah.
Mm. That's so interesting because it makes me think that I do feel like I've noticed this connection between people who are like, I guess we'll say like sensitive or intuitive and like feeling put upon maybe by like a sense of external authority. And I'm now kind of curious about maybe I don't know, feels like weird. I don't like when people say we, but like maybe some of us, some folks might be like, and like as you said, like picking up on like astral imprints like of the people in our lives, maybe even picking up on their like ancestral imprints that they might not even be fully conscious of.
That part. That fucking part, yo.
So like,
Wow.
and then that kind of like extends and like triangulates or maybe makes a broader shape with like it goes beyond like maybe just the one-to-one like parent child, when the child is able to pick up on all of these imprints.
Yeah.
So I'm just
Wow.
like thinking of that, not to be like your sensitivity is a strength or like whatever, but like like just like kind of like I don't know, like that just seems to make like some logical sense to me in a way.
Yeah. No, and that weaving is like super powerful because it's like in my subconscious, but the way that you just kind of narrated that also like I think speaks to sometimes these like social loops that I'll like get in where I'm like the mom of the group or that I'm playing these extended like roles. And I think recently I was like realizing like just like on a like energetic and like somatic sense, I was kind of just sitting with the places in my fields that I guess you could call them chords, but places of connection and like coalescence tend to happen. Um, and it does. It feels like some usually like when I sit on it or try to refine based on it, I'm like, this is some like gnarly ancestral exponential math. I'm like, this is like this person was created by this person who's created by this person, and then these people influenced that generation. And I'm like, whoa, like and not that it's overwhelming, but it also like just I guess like beefs up the type of spiritual repertoire that maybe some people experience. I know I definitely experience it, but it also sometimes, yeah, like in that sense, it's my understanding of it is very nonlinear and somatic, and also is something that yeah, like I'm noticing within myself as well. So it's not like I have it figured out or that I'm like, oh yeah, like this is how you work these timelines. But yeah, something about just sitting with that like ancestral sort of crescendo or dissension. Yeah, that really hits for me. That's powerful.
I feel like the exponents thing is so like interesting to me because like if I remember correctly in math, like when you have an exponent, it's like you have a number and then like a little number like on top of it. And like I
Yeah,
almost think like it almost is like there's like a little number like sitting on the larger number's like shoulder. Which is just like interesting because I was just thinking about how like it can like at least for me it can feel like there's like like a
yeah,
a mother, but then like the traces of ancestry in that mother like sitting on the shoulder in some way. And
absolutely.
like and for some reason too, I'm thinking of like little knots on a string. Like
Mm.
for some with the exponent is like doing a lot for me, I guess. But like I'm just thinking of like little knots on a string. But then also like I'm thinking of like macrame.
Mm. Oh,
Which I feel like Anna brought up macrame at some point. Yeah? Okay. Um, like macrame is like an art that is made of knots, I think. Um, so yeah. And like and there's something about like there can be an elegance to like I feel like knots happen and there can be like an elegance to them when they are like spaced out in a way that create that where there is space between them. and when you can see like the larger design of them. And sometimes I feel like with macrame, it's like things are woven like a circle too. So it's like you can like elegant design. And then there's like the type of knot that's like just like that happens by accident. That's like, you know, like just like really a tangle that doesn't have like space to it.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking of that.
There's something in what you just said about like knots that create like patterns in art through virtue of maybe macrame or unintentional macrame, and then knots and that are like tangles, and how that's like just kind of like the difference between like intentionality and like maybe doing something unconsciously. um and that's like often like when I'm doing inner child work or I'm working on my like inner child, I feel like that's probably like the resounding message that I try to relate to like my inner child, um is like around the intentionality that maybe surrounds circumstances that are seemingly like chaotic or like seemingly random, and offering those things to like my younger self to be like, you might not understand it, and I'm definitely not going to gaslight your pain because you're feeling it and I'm feeling it. And also like helping my inner child like understand that there like the textural differences between things that are done unconsciously that end up in tangles that are hard to pick apart, and things that happen that may surprise us or take us by storm, so to speak, and how they could be pieces to like a larger puzzle or a larger piece of art, kind of like how you named. That shit is tough, but yeah.
Yeah. That sounds like a very powerful offering to your inner child. Yeah.
Definitely.
I'm like getting this somatic feeling that I get sometimes where it's like there's like a circle that goes like here and then down like below my like shoulder blades in like the back. And it feels like very like light and like comforting. Like a hula hoop.
That's beautiful.
I realized we never looked at your chart.
Oh yeah. That old thing.
That's so Are you feeling do you feel called to look at your chart, or do you feel called to not?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I screen share your chart so we can have it in the space?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Can you see it?
Yes, I can.
What calls out to you just looking at it now, visually?
There's a lot going on in Sagittarius.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing I notice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like this is just, I'm just guessing, but since we're very close to the end of Sag season, it looks like the sun just passed over your North Node and your Venus.
Okay.
Really
Will you say more on that? Because I'll say right now, I'm gonna ask a lot of questions because I like to sometimes intentionally keep myself in the dark about astrology, because I like
Yeah.
to be surprised. So feel free to
Yeah.
delineate as much as you'd like.
Okay. Well, but if you want to keep yourself in the dark, I don't want to like shed too much light on it.
It's okay. I'll forget tomorrow.
Okay, I love that. That's so like Sagittarian to me. I love that. um I really love that. Yeah. Well, what was I gonna say? Well, I guess like just what I like to just really look at the chart like visually. I try not to like think about it like too much. But I like to look at the wheel and think of the wheel as both like a day where like we see, can you see my mouse?
Yes.
Yeah. So like I like to think of the wheel in terms of a day. So like we do have like this is the horizon line, right? And like I like to think of what's up here is like what's up in the sky, like what you can look up and see like when you're awake and what's like visible.
Mhm.
And then I like to think of everything below that as like the nocturnal elements. So like when you kind of like, recline or like rest, or when you go to sleep, like the things that are kind of on like the ground, or maybe like in the like subterranean aspects of the chart.
Cool.
Um, and then I also like liken that to the year as well, like in terms of the sun's travel. So I think it's interesting to see like what the sun is passing over in your chart, to kind of look at these notions of like visibility or maybe like peak experiences versus like times where notions of maybe recharging or regenerating like the soil could be more like apt metaphors to use. And like so like if my cursor is the sun, right, like it's currently passing like right here, like over almost to Capricorn. So like the sun is at such this like high point in your chart, it's almost making a right angle with the horizon.
Mm.
So I'm curious if like that image brings anything up for you, like at this point in time in the year.
Whoa. Whoa. Yeah. Yeah, I guess just to localize it a little bit, I always feel like the time of year after my birthday, which is in the fall, it's in November, is hi. Um is like that's when I feel like I really experience a sort of like rebirth, and where I shine is like in the fall to winter seasons, just to kind of give it a season. And also how there was another thing that came up. Oh yeah, I was also thinking about how when I was born in a state that did not experience snowfall or snow or the changing of seasons to a like a dramatic effect. But then 2 months after I was born, my family moved to Toronto, and that's when I like experienced my first like hardcore winter where there was like snow everywhere on the ground. I had to wear like a snowsuit. So I also have these like very palatable, like textured memories of the not only the changing of seasons, but the changing of ecosystems around the time of my birth. And one other thing I'll say is like always, yeah, like a couple months or a couple days before my birthday and a couple months after, I always feel like traveling. So
Mhm.
I don't know if that reflects what's in my chart, but it definitely feels like, yeah, like I get a burst of almost like, yeah, like that regenerative essence from the sun around this time of year.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, like, so yeah, the like, so like the sun is in your ninth house, and the ninth house is all about like long distance travel. So that's like kind of it's a little bit on the nose. So like, I don't know, when I make those kind of connections, I'm like, that's cool, but like, I don't know, like I'm just like, of course it is. Of course you're experiencing that.
Right. Right.
Um, but I don't know, like an interesting thing for you too, just like archetypally with your chart, is that you're an Aries rising. And so and like how to explain it? Like Aries is like archetypally like the first sign. And so like in the original like Thema Mundi chart, it was like, yes, Aries is first house, Taurus is second house, Gemini is third house. So there's like this matching up of these two like wheels that with an Aries rising chart gets like it's just it matches up. Does that like make any sense?
I think so, yeah. And I always a couple of other astrologers have told me the same thing where it like matches my chart matches with yeah, like the structure of charts is how they put it. So I don't know if that's the same thing, but
Yeah.
that makes sense to me.
Well, like in a way, you could say that an Aries rising chart is like the blueprint.
Will you say more, please? Please just stroke my ego some more. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily even like a good thing. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, it's like, like,
Totally.
I feel like I don't know. I struggle to explain this, but like, okay, so like everyone has the 12 houses in their chart, right? That's one like, and then everyone will have the 12 signs like somewhere, right? Your first house could be any of the signs. But like the first house like has the archetypal nature of Aries. So like you could either have your first house like match that archetypal nature like or not. And it's not, you know, it's not like a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's like I'm trying to think of like a metaphor for this. Like like well, I can't think of it. I'm like I don't put like too much pressure on my mind. I guess, well, yeah, I guess I'll just leave it at that. Like it is like there, like an Aries rising chart has a certain like archetypal blueprint aspect to it, where there is like some kind of like more primordial like matching up of the houses with the signs. So like Aries is like whatever is happening in the first house is going to be Aries like, right? Like whatever is happening in the second house is going to be Taurus like. And that's just like doubled down upon because like the original chart, quote unquote, had like that order of operations, I guess.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes so much sense. Yeah.
So like, and you could see that in like the Sagittarius house that we're talking about. Like the ninth house is the nature of travel, right? Sagittarius is the nature of Jupiter, which like rules over travel and expansion, like these kinds of things. So yeah, I guess I don't know. I think it's interesting to have this like archetypal chart that's like, I don't know. I'm just thinking of that in light of like this linear time question that we were thinking of earlier. And like, what does it mean to have this more like primordial or like almost more like timeless orientation in a way with the chart, I guess.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying. Like the timeless orientation just kind of like I won't say took me out, but it definitely solidified. I think more of what you're saying and how like yeah, like the power of the archetypes in my chart just feels like almost like kind of like not too easy, but like kind of like what you said earlier, like of course is how I feel about a lot of things in relation to like my natal chart as well. I also want to read what some people are saying in the chat because I feel like there might be some gnosis. Yeah. I grab my phone.
Yeah, like doubling up on everything. I feel like that's how I see it.
Yeah, that aligns for me too.
It doesn't mean it's good, right? Like, it just means that it like is, I guess. Yeah. Aries doesn't get an off day.
Yeah, I'd say that aligns.
Huh. Uh-huh. Well, and it also makes Mars the ruler of your chart too.
Mm, interesting.
And specifically Mars in Cancer in the 4th house, which is like big matrilineal things, in my opinion.
Yeah, same. I always like when I tap into those aspects of my energy, I feel like it's my Mars in Cancer speaking or like taking over the mic. So yeah.
I also think of Mars as you know, the Mars is like the warrior and like all the fighter, all these things, but like I also think of Mars as like a pair of scissors. Like Mars can go like snip
Oh
and
wow.
yeah. Um like the power to sever, I
Mm,
think is both of Mars and Saturn. Um but I think it's just, you know, just like given that we're talking about knots and threads and strings and like just like this the scissor. Um but then it's like Mars is in like in your chart, what does Mars want? Or what are the archetypes of Mars? Like Mars is in Cancer. Like it's like that is a Mars that like if you're snipping, like if you're chopping something, it's like in the service of more belonging. It's like in the service of tenderness and connection, right? But it understands that you have to like do that sometimes.
100%. Yeah. Wow. I love what you said too about like cutting things off for more kindness or maybe like more harmony. It that is 100% true to my experience. And it's also not something that I get exposed to until I'm willing to do the cutting that like Mars or like even the archetype of Aries like asks me to do. And I say ask because it is an invitation. Like I could also be like F my placements, but it actually is like it's so weird. It's like I'll get called to cut certain things off or stop doing certain things, like turn away from specific connections, almost like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually also I like what you said about it being into this in the service of like a greater harmony because usually I don't have any qualms about the like what I'm doing it in service towards. Like I don't have an issue or hesitance when it comes to like cutting things off. Like that scissors analogy is so alive for me right now. So thank you for that. That is so fitting.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so cool that you, I don't know, just thinking of how you introduced the dojo container, like just thinking of like, if we were to say that your chart is ruled by Mars and just like thinking of the martial aspect of this container, I feel like that's really beautiful. Um, mm. I also realized that today is my Mars opposition. I just kind of realized that. So like yeah, like Mars is like currently opposing my natal Mars. So that feels
Interesting.
like a really interesting, like very interesting for this container as well.
Yeah.
Um, mm. Well, I feel like we've covered so much. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. Yeah. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I feel like I do feel like the tenor of the container has changed when bringing in astrology,
In
which is
what
good.
way do you think?
Um, I think there's something about having this like document or image to like look at that I won't say it has like diffused the container, but like I do feel like it has maybe expanded it in some way, maybe diffused it a little bit. Um, but it's interesting too to think of well, I guess I just reflecting for myself, like mm, I've never like had a one-on-one session where we don't talk about astrology for so long. And I really appreciate how other things have like wanted to come into the container. And I love astrology so much. And I feel like sometimes there can be this thing of I guess kind of like what we've been doing in this past part of like, right, like I feel this, and it's like, oh, your chart says that you might feel that, and it's like, oh, I feel that, and my chart says, so it can be like, I'm just realizing how it can be a little bit of a tautology sometimes.
Oh, well said. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But I
Yeah.
think, well, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh no, go on. I was just kind of meditating out loud.
Yeah. I feel like I almost feel complete speaking about your astrology, because I feel like the piece that wanted to come in was like the Mars as the chart ruler. And I think that we could talk about more astrology, but I think that might, I don't know. I just don't know how helpful it would be for this container at this time.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I trust that. I trust if you want to move forward from it. I feel like that feels good.
Cool. All right, let's stop the share. Cool. Thank you for, thanks for bearing with that. The sun is really nice in here right now.
We're all like noticing the light, because I definitely like the sun came out here as well, and I'm just like, oh wow.
Yeah. Tautology and knots are very tangled together for me. Yeah. I'm like kind of seeing, when thinking about astrology, I'm like, right, there's like this astrology of like this is this is this is this. And then there's like an astrology of like what is a planetary force or energy that might be present in this space that we can kind of like track to, and maybe then just like hold that for the rest of the container. So I think this is, I think this is like helpful for me when I'm thinking about different uses of that tool. I have an exercise that I took from this book that I've been reading about dreaming and Kabbalah. And I was wondering if I could, well, there's a little bit to read, and then if we could do a brief little like imaginal exercise. How does that feel?
That feels aligned.
So so I have this book. It's called Dreaming and Kabbalah by Catherine Shainberg. And it has a bunch of different imaginal exercises. I think I sent one in the Broom like a couple weeks ago that is like imagining like a rainbow bridge. But this one has to do with like the notion of a knot as well. So I thought I would share it. So she has this little part where she talks about basically like the original Gordian knot. Have people heard of that phrase before, the Gordian knot? Okay, well, it'll describe like what it is. So basically, Alexander the Great, there's this old chariot that is in the walls of this temple, the Temple of Zeus, in the Acropolis of Gordium, which is the ancient capital of Phrygia. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. So legend has it that Gordius, who is father of King Midas, had migrated from Macedonia in this old wooden chariot. His arrival fulfilled a local prophecy, and he became king of the city, which henceforth bore the name of Gordium. And he became the ruler of all of Phrygia. So in gratitude to Zeus, Gordius takes this big chariot and he dedicates it to the temple. And then he ties this really big, it says huge, complex, multiple knot, attaching the chariot's draw pole to its yoke. At some later point, a prophecy sprang up about this curious, elaborate knot. Whoever could untie it would one day rule all of Asia. So Alexander the Great, he comes to Gordium. The oracle at Delphi had predicted that he would be invincible in battle. He's only 20 years old. And he's been like living up to this prediction. It's been going well. But then at that moment, circumstances and events were combining to turn drastically against him. He is running out of money to pay his troops. And there's this new commander-in-chief of the Persian forces who is doing all these victories. And so it kind of seems like he might be overcome. And so he's like, maybe I should just turn around and go back to Greece. But then if he did so, he would be proving the oracle wrong. And he's like, I don't want to do that. So I'll read this piece from the book. The huge skein of tangled tree bark knot, standing as it did at a key road junction, provides a superb metaphor for Alexander's own blocked state of mind at this critical juncture. Will he ignore the knot and its spectacular prophecy that whoever unties it will win sovereignty over all of Asia and return with his army to Greece? That would be the rational choice. Or will he face the challenge, a radical gesture many of us seem to shy away from, awaiting him with the knot? So basically he starts like struggling with the knot, and he's like, I can't, like, he's like putting a lot of energy into it, but he's like feeling helpless about it. Then she writes, picture the shift. A king, a conqueror, full of the hero's impetuous fury, surrenders his conscious drive. He chooses to silence his critical voice, humble his ego, face the fear of not knowing. His greatness is in having the courage to admit this critical impasse. His conscious mind cannot solve the problem. Clearly, something other must happen. Okay. So, this is just like the brief, like, imaginal exercise. So, you can close your eyes, and just picture numbers counting down from 3, 2, 1, and you can imagine the 1 being like really like tall. So breathe out 3 times. And then imagine yourself like Alexander, daring to inhabit your ambivalence, unrest, or emptiness, and to feel it. Okay, breathe out once. Allow yourself to plunge below the surface problem into an open space. Okay. You can start to see the space, witness what the space looks like and feels like, and how you move in it. And think of, in this open space, what is attracting you? So you can just keep exploring as you would like, and then you can open your eyes when you feel ready. Would you like to share anything that came up in this space?
Yes, I'd also want to invite other people to share as well. I experienced this place as a pool of water, and I felt like I moved around this space like an aquatic being, is what it kind of felt like to me.
I love that.
I wonder what came up for others, if you guys want to share. Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool, Lara Croft. Yeah. Empty white icy space. That's so cool.
Mm.
Amazing. Mhm. Felt quieter for me. Yeah, the last time that I did that exercise, I just saw myself like lying down on the grass, just quiet and still. Well, I feel complete for this container, I will say.
Thank you for saying. Yeah, I do too. And I at least like the part of it that was like focused on me for sure. Um and I'm curious if there's stuff that came up for other folks as Lena was kind of like making offerings, and I'd say like dropping some wisdom on I think a lot of things, but one of the main things that I think I'm taking away from this collaboration is a lot actually. It feels like I don't know, like I feel like the way that this container was opened and the I would say different ways you kind of helped me weave like these ancestral knots and even like unweave some of the things that were occurring to me as like tangles was not only just powerful, but I'd say palpable. Like I feel, of course, a lot of openings in my heart. Um, I also feel like just being able to reach across like practices, lineages, gnosis, and like see one another like in this kind of like full, like embodied, but also like kind of silly like way is like I don't know, it takes so much of the edge off of like I don't know, because if you see a container named dojo, automatically I'm like people are gonna fight. But I'm like, why? Like this was not that at all. um I also, of course, like respect your expertise and like perspective on a lot of things, but I also feel like the moment in this container where you were like, okay, now we're done with the chart was just like, I don't know, I really love that because it's like you got what you needed from it and you were just like, okay, thank you. And um yeah, that's just always I always like get excited to see like people do that, like take their tools and then like reimagine the way that the tools can be applied in any given circumstance. So yeah, just I want to thank you for like not only your attention to detail, but like your attention to like this container and like being responsive to it.
Thank you so much for saying that. I felt a little crazy just saying like, let's put the astrology away, but I felt really called to, and I'm really glad that that was supported. Um, yeah. um, I feel like y'all's like presence was what really like supported me in making that pivot, because I was like, I don't want to compromise that presence by lingering in a modality that doesn't feel like it has as much to offer. And so, yeah, I felt like this space was just so well held. And yeah, I'm just so grateful for everything that you shared, Hoda, and your vulnerability and your humor and just your deep presence. And yeah, I just feel like personally very rejuvenated by this container, and curious. And yeah, so thank you.
Thank you so much for what's the word that wants to come to mind for me? I guess like it's not really like a verb, because I feel like when I think of verbs, I think of linearity and like mechanisms and like chronos time, right? And I feel like when you said rejuvenated, it made a lot of sense to me, because my sense was kind of like the way that we kind of set off, if I want to kind of like bring in like kind of a Sagittarian archetypal characteristic, right? It was like, okay, we're going to like correct linearity or something. And instead, I feel like the feeling that I'm kind of left with, and of course, like I'd love to hear what everybody else is sort of observing. Um, I'll say that like when I was a kid, I felt like I was always being rushed from like one point to another point, or I was like stuck somewhere waiting for a period of time to happen or like elapse. And I felt like somewhere non-linearly between like the imaginal exercise and like the care that you took with like the etymology of like the word linear and all of the not imagery, it kind of left me with a childhood memory which I didn't have, which I feel like I can enjoy now, which is just like having space for my curiosity to breathe. And I feel like there's part of me which is like curious about how Hoda feels about linearity, or how like how you feel about linearity now, or how anybody feels about linearity now. And then there's a part of me which is like, okay, like don't stir the bear of linearity, but it just feels like it feels kind of like gone for me, and I'm kind of curious how that like reflects and refracts for y'all.
Yeah, I felt like part of me was like, so let's go back to your original question, like how do you feel about it now? And I was like, that feels trite and like also linear. So that's why I didn't do that.
Yeah, I wrote in the chat, like, I'm not sure where we are, but I love it. Like there was a moment like after when he like took us through the like plunge, it was just like and then it was just like there was just like so much like wide open space and just like quiet that opened up, and I was like, this is incredible. Thank you both.
I'm like now I'm wondering, I'm like, was this whole container just to dismember linearity, y'all? I mean, I didn't plan it like that, but it happens.
I guess what comes up for me when you ask that question was like how like knots are only knots from the perspective of linearity, but otherwise they're just like the way a connection flows, right?
Mm.
Like the definition of a knot sort of implies to me that an unknotted straight line is kind of like the ultimate of connection or something.
Mm.
Yeah. 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 Well, now I just remembered something from my childhood that like I had like this like messy jewelry box that just had like a lot of random old like necklaces in it. Maybe some that
Uh-huh.
were like an ant or something. And I feel like they were always just tangled. And like sometimes I would just like take one out, but I was like a kid and I was like I don't even necessarily want to wear this jewelry. I was like I kind of just want to like play with like the knots.
Mm.
So I just remember that.
Dang.
Um, I mean, I guess like I don't know. I mean, I feel called to say it anyway, even though it feels a little bit intrusive for me. But like when I kind of think about this like arrangement of present and future and past now, it just feels like kind of like a blessed scope to me. I don't know if that feels like if it feels like that to either of y'all, but does
Will you
that
say that again? Because it
yeah,
kind of broke up.
yeah. This arrangement of like present and then future and past now just kind of feels like a kind of like blessed sort of kaleidoscope or something to me
Mm,
versus like a
yeah.
kink thing, right? Um but yeah, I'd love to hear how that lands for y'all.
Whew. Blessed kaleidoscope. Well, I'll say like a couple times during this container, there was like a part of me that was like feeling like I was watching this container. And then there's a part of me feeling like I'm in this container. And there felt like a part of me that like received and like fully digested this container was like looking back like that's the stuff. And so like for me, I'm like, yeah, kaleidoscope really aligns. And then I also felt like these like waves of energy, like kind of like flowing out of my heart, especially like Lena, when you were kind of helping me untangle some of the like matrilineal stuff. And I felt a lot of that like tangled energy like release from my like higher heart and then kind of like diffuse like around like my crown and my third eye. And I was just like, that is new. And I also feel like, I mean, it's a feature of like kind of like dojo because I was like, I'm ready to get work. But it was not only gentle, I also just feel like this notion of like linearity is kind of outside of my field now. And like I'm not catering to it um as much anymore, at least in this moment.
I really feel that. Even like I feel like I was kind of like in like a linear or like constricted space a bit when I like entered the space and like when you first said like present, future, past, like for some like I'm realizing I saw them all like on an equal like plane. Like was seeing them in this very like 2D. Like and now I'm like, oh, present, future, past, like they could be anywhere. Like I was like, why did
Yeah,
I space open? Like this like line. Like why was that the only available space for things to exist in.
right. Wow. That is that's fascinating to me. Like in such a sincere, I'm like, I mean, I know like all of the like magic behind like when people when two or three gather and all that kind of stuff, but I'm just also like, I don't know. I kind of want to stay with I was definitely complete with the container as it was as a linear thing, but now that it's like non-linear, I'm like, okay, so what's good, guys? Like, like what do we you know? It definitely feels more spacious in here for sure.
Yeah, I'm super curious. Because like yeah, as y'all were kind of like opening up, like my guides were just like fucking howling, just like laughing, like slapping their thighs, just like screaming. Like like I could delineate a little bit, but I think yeah, like you were saying, like sort of like I mean, when you were talking about not only like how your matrilineal lineage is sort of like I want to say like turn away from the past and then just it's almost like lay open a field for like the like let's say like the rebirth or like the rooting or like the sprouting of like a new version of the patrilineal lineage is like how it comes up for me. Like my root stung. Like it felt like I felt like my root was just like getting clipped with like hot scissors or something. I can't really delineate further than that apart from like talking about what it's how it's weird to be like goddess embodied in a male body sort of things. But I think like it really hits for my matrilineal lineage as well, which I think does connect to like Madagascar and Hainan and like Southeast Africa, which is like, you know, in the neighborhood for you. um, and then, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure like what you would say about your matrilineal lineage is, I don't know, because it's not my place, I don't feel, but I think they have a pretty different connection to their lineages. Um, and it just felt like it felt like like, have y'all heard the term like maternal gift before? It's like the maternal gift economy. It's just, it's yeah, it's a concept, but it's about um, like maternity being about like giving without knowing like what's going to be taken or how it's going to be used.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, it feels pretty epic to me. I don't know. Like it feels like I don't know. Like to me, I would say like the way that I tend to say these things, which is very abstract, is like it feels like this gift ripples down my matrilineal lineage. Like it's not just for like me, but it's like a pretty epic remembering like in the body of human consciousness, like from my perspective. And yeah, I'm super, super, super grateful. Like I just like I started bowling when you guys started talking, and um, I'm really excited to see like what kind of grows from this bed.
Mm.
Me too.
Me three.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been like so deep in my like matrilineal ancestry, like connection research writing for the past, like that's been like my main, I think, project for the past few months. And I've seen like definitely a lot has shifted when I have kind of looked at um I guess like that notion of like, yeah, maternal gifts. I mean, I've been thinking more about like, I feel like there are some gifts in my like matrilineal lineage that I feel like were like frozen at a certain point through like exile and displacement. And so I've been really thinking a lot about how to like unfreeze and like thaw out that lineage. So this felt like a nice continuation of that for me personally.
I guess like the other thing that comes up for me, and I'm curious how this lands for y'all, is like like most cultures, I'd say like take patronyms. I mean, they're called patronyms because the family names come from the fathers. And, like in some traditions, you take the patronym of your mother's father, and then you take the patronym of like your father's father, right? Like in like, I guess like Castilian naming cultures, but it's still not like the family name of the mother. Um, and to me, it just sort of feels like that mystery is sort of like quintessentially like feminine to me and like really fertile. And I feel I want to say that at least like for my matrilineal lineage is like the exploration of that uncharted space feels like very, very welcome and like very honored. Um, mm.
Yeah, I say that aligns for me as well. In the sense that I do feel like traditional like pockets of, or well, they're maybe not traditional at all, but the way that I see it often when I interact with my matrilineal ancestry or just the different and various matriarchs that are in my family line from both sides, it always feels like I'm on an adventure with them. And in the sense that they're helping me find something or see something that I otherwise wouldn't see. And, I invoked the spirit of my grandma earlier, and I definitely feel her now. And she's like, just kind of sharing, just even as I'm speaking right now, like psychically sharing these like little notes about even why my particular interest is in the woo, in the metaphysical. I feel like she's also sharing with me like why maybe many people feel like they're explorers along with being on a spiritual path. Like it's not just that they're on a spiritual path, they're like intentionally exploring themselves as a part of their kind of like what you spoke to, Lena, like reinvigorating and like re engaging with these parts of our lineage that have otherwise may have been, if not socially exiled, like exiled from like the spiritual tree of like one's family. And I definitely feel like in this container at least there's just some codes being shared on like how to reclaim that, how to like flush areas that may have been stored away by past ancestors for safekeeping, how to open up those treasures, how to access those gifts, but again to sort of stay on the path, right? And like learn also. And like I feel like that aligns mostly because I feel like in dojo and in these containers there's like a one-to-one connection or like a few to one or a few and a few. um but then like I'll like, sit down and meditate after stuff like this and like kind of like ask to be shown like what's happening in the ethers as people like sit like this, and I'm like, oh my god, there's this level of exchange that's even hard for me to articulate sometimes, but it I think definitely aligns with what you all are saying. Like there's a mystery to these exchanges. It feels like the mystery doesn't want to be distilled from them, but the codes definitely feel fertile, feel ripe and ready to like exchange from my perspective. I wonder how that lands for y'all.
I feel like I have no more words to add because I'm just like, yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, when I think about what you're saying about codes being shared without the mystery being distilled, it's just like, okay, it would be, I feel like it would, yeah, it would kind of like reduce the value of the mystery to talk about the mechanism. But I think that when I think of codes being shared, it's like how we move will change, you know? like what feels like ripe to pick will change. And yeah, I think I'm being kept from saying more. And that feels great. It feels it feels like the way that you keep the juice going, right? It's like yeah. Well, um, yeah, I feel like honoring what Lena was saying. I'm also like now I'm wondering if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly because I just pronounce things like phonetically. Is it Lena or Lena or
Lena.
Lena? Sorry. Um, and yeah, I feel pretty complete as well. I'm just kind of curious if anybody else wants to chime in with any like closing reflections. Um, but yeah, I'm like grateful beyond words for the work that y'all have done, um, and for the courage. I mean, like I said before, the container, I felt like the polarity was just like crackling. So I know it wasn't necessarily an easy container to step into and just like flow, but I feel like the placement in the space and the textures of energy that were offered were just like stunning to me. And I look forward to seeing how it ripples through time for all of us, whether we want to talk about it or not. Is there anything else y'all would want to say before I stop the recording and close? We're good. All right. Thank you so much, y'all. I'll post the recording into the thread and then we can figure out if we want to post it publicly. If you consider my following on YouTube public. And yeah, thanks again so much and have a great Mercury Day. Peace, yeah.
Bye, everyone.